Some people say I'm really ugly and anorexic. Some say the only reason I'm on TV is because I'm pretty. I say to them, get your slander straight. You are what you are, whether you're small or skinny, or smart or dumb. Just do what you do. Although God believers don't need evolution to be false, atheists need evolution to be true. I cut through the nonsense with the blinding light of truth. The question isn't whether we need guns, it's whether the government should have a monopoly on force. Liberals are stalwart defenders of civil liberties, provided we're only talking about criminals. The beauty of being a liberal is that history always begins this morning. Everyday liberals can create a new narrative that destroys the past as it occurred. We have always been at war with Eastasia. It may be annoying, but the rash of hijackings by Connecticut WASP girls surely explains the time-consuming but still somehow completely useless examination of my personal effects. We all have to make sacrifices for airline safety. Words mean nothing to liberals. They say whatever will help advance their cause at the moment, switch talking points in a heartbeat, and then act indignant if anyone uses the exact same argument they were using 5 minutes ago. It would be a much better country if women did not vote. That is simply a fact. In fact, in every presidential election since 1950, except Goldwater in '64, the Republican would have won if only the men had voted. College campuses have become fascist colonies of anti-American hate speech, hypersensitivity, speech codes, banded words, and prohibited scientific inquiry. Now, liberals compare their every riot, every traffic blockage, every Starbucks window smashing, street protest to the civil rights movement, which was only necessary because of them. Democrats are firm believers in the welfare state for their own constituents, whether that's a crack addict mother of 5 or a Wall Street banker. But ultimately, the purpose of marriage is to transmit civilization to the next generation. There has never been an institution that does it as well as marriage, and that is marriage between a man and a woman. I don't really understand the point about carping about every casualty, every bombing, every death. War is hell. That's why people say war is hell. Liberals have managed to eliminate the idea of manly honor. Instead, all they have is womanly indignation. Obamacare would never have passed without decades of massive immigration from the third world. Liberals didn't change any minds, they changed the voters. Why not go to war just for oil? We need oil. What do Hollywood celebrities imagine fuels their private jets? How do they think their cocaine is delivered to them? When your party is controlled by a billionaire, rootless international financier who expresses no sense of guilt for collaborating with the Nazis, you might want to ease up on lecturing the rest of us about the evil rich. I defy any of my co-religionists to tell me they do not laugh at the idea of Dawkins burning in hell. In the spirit of reaching across the aisle, we owe it to the Democrats to show their president the exact same kind of respect and loyalty that they have shown our recent Republican president. The truth cannot be delivered with Novican. I think being called a she-devil by a trial lawyer is meant as a compliment. Guns are our friends because, in a country without guns, I'm what's known as prey. All females are. I think there should be a literacy test and a poll tax for people to vote. It's impossible to talk without labels. Dog is a label, but that doesn't mean it's meaningless, nor does it mean there's no difference in a Shih Tzu and a Doberman. His pomposity is overshadowed only by his rank stupidity. David Axelrod says we need to inspire more young people to be journalists. How about inspiring journalists to be journalists? Since when do the media care about the disabled? I don't remember a lot of gnashing of teeth when Fox's Family Guy made fun of Sarah Palin's Down syndrome child, Trig. It's often said that those who are unduly bothered by gays are latent homosexuals. Isn't it possible that people obsessed with racism are themselves racist? With the terrible earthquake and resulting tsunami that have devastated Japan, the only good news is that anyone exposed to excess radiation from the nuclear power plants is now probably much less likely to get cancer. Democrats couldn't care less if people in Indiana hate them. But if Europeans curl their lips, liberals can't look at themselves in the mirror. Swing voters are more appropriately known as the idiot voters because they have no set of philosophical principles. By the age of 14, you're either a conservative or a liberal if you have an IQ above a toaster. In California, the fabulously rich support the poor with government jobs paid for by the middle class, which is now living in Arizona. It's just like a liberal. They import slaves, they hold slaves, they fight for slavery, they go to war in a civil war to defend slavery. They then install legal discrimination against blacks for 100 years. Invalidating laws has absolutely nothing to do with judicial activism. It depends on whether the law is unconstitutional or not. That's really the key point. I love to engage in repartee with people who are stupider than I am. If you attack the Clintons publicly, make sure all your friends know that you are not planning suicide, that you're not careless when you drive a car. It confirms my idea that you also need more liberal gun laws. Guns lead to a polite society, as we like to say in the United States, and I think that all of Western Canada would agree with me. Where there's smoke around a conservative, there are journalists furiously rubbing two sticks together. Democrats could never accept the fact that civil rights was about correcting specific and severe injustices done to American blacks principally because they were the ones who had perpetrated the injustices. We know who the homicidal maniacs are. They are the ones cheering and dancing right now. I am not the first to note the vast differences between the Wall Street protesters and the Tea Partiers. To name three, the Tea Partiers have jobs, showers, and a point. America would still be an unnamed continent full of migratory tribes chasing the rear end of a buffalo every time their stomachs growled. The really amazing part, to me, was when Florida made it into the Final Four. The Democrats didn't demand a recount. Usually the nonsense liberals spout is kind of cute, but in wartime, their instinctive idiocy is life-threatening. China built a 13,000-mile wall several centuries before Christ, and it's still working. Democratic vice presidential candidate John Edwards used to claim that there are two Americas, the rich and the poor. If Democrats have their way, there will be two Latin Americas, both of them poor. You're living in one of them right now. Whenever you come across a screw-up this big, you know the government is behind it. Some jobs are so dirty you can only send in someone who has the finely honed hatred of liberals acquired at elite universities to do them. The country will have the economy of Uganda, but Democrats will be in total control. Moderation in the defense of liberty is no virtue. Until you can intelligently articulate the other side's position, you are not an adult. You are a liberal. Throw in never read books, and you have the dictionary definition of a liberal. Being completely uninformed is precisely how most liberals stay liberal. You know you're doing something right when you've reduced hordes of liberals to blind, sputtering rage. I've decided to cut out the part of the speech where I say anything nice about Democrats. These days, even a moderate Democrat is someone who thinks you shouldn't be taught fisting until you're at least 12 years old. Why is it that the same people who have the least confidence in the police and the military are the most willing to allow only the police and the military to have guns? It's striking how so many immigration activists don't seem to particularly like this country. They tell us that America is a teeming mass of racist, sexist, homophobic bigots, but then they insist on bringing the rest of the world to live here. Democrats always assure us that deterrence will work, but when the time comes to deter, they're against it. A false argument should be refuted, not named. That's the basic idea behind freedom of speech. Arguments by name-calling, rather than truth and light, can generally be presumed fraudulent. Anncoulter, born December 8, 1961, in New York City, to John Vincent Coulter, 19-62008, an FBI agent from a working-class Catholic Irish-American and German-American family in Albany, New York, and Nell husbands Coulter Martin, 1928-2009, who was born in Paducah, Kentucky. She has two older brothers, James, an accountant, and John, an attorney. Her family later moved to New Canaan, Connecticut, where Coulter and her two brothers were raised. Anncoulter is an American conservative media pundit, author, syndicated columnist, and lawyer. She became known as a media pundit in the late 1990s, appearing in print and on cable news as an outspoken critic of the Clinton administration. Her first book concerned the impeachment of Bill Clinton and sprang from her experience writing legal briefs for Paula Jones's attorneys, as well as columns she wrote about the cases. COULTER's syndicated column for Universal Press Syndicate appears in newspapers and is featured on conservative websites. COULTER has also written 13 books. COULTER graduated from New Canaan High School in 1980. While attending Cornell University, COULTER helped found the Cornell Review and was a member of the Delta Gamma National Sorority. She graduated cum laude from Cornell in 1984 with a Bachelor of Arts degree in history and received her Juris Doctor from the University of Michigan Law School in 1988, where she was an editor of the Michigan Law Review. At Michigan, COULTER was president of the local chapter of the Federalist Society and was trained at the National Journalism Center. She is particularly known for her polemical style and describes herself as someone who likes to stir up the pot. I don't pretend to be impartial or balanced, as broadcasters do. She idolized Claire Booth Luce for her satirical style. She also makes numerous public appearances, speaking on television and radio talk shows, as well as on college campuses, receiving both praise and protest. COULTER typically spends 6 to 12 weeks of the year on speaking engagement tours, and more when she has a book coming out. In 2010, she made an estimated $500,000 on the speaking circuit, giving speeches on topics of modern conservatism, gay marriage, and what she describes as the hypocrisy of modern American liberalism. In defense of her ideas, COULTER has on occasion responded with inflammatory remarks toward hecklers and protesters who attend her speeches.